Shedeur finally challenged the coach, and what happened next has players quietly saying this could end very badly.
Us by surprise. That was not something that we saw coming. They called us, and it happened very fast and happened not too long ago. So still working through all roster type of things. I always have to be mindful of our players and our players' development, and I want to make sure that I'm always doing what's best.
It's very important, Stefanski said, that nothing had changed from the last time we'd had this discussion, and that in fact then what that means is that Dylan is still getting 100% of the reps. I think that's very important, because that tells me that Stefanski is still committed to Dylan Gabriel.
I'll be honest with you, I think Stefanski's going to be committed to Dylan regardless. I think it's whether Stefanski succumbs to pressure whether it's on his staff or from outside his staff that says, we've watched your guy play, he's not very good, let's go to the other one.
And maybe that's Haslam. I'm not sure. We've kind of always pinpointed it to be Haslam when that day eventually does come. He just gets tired of watching Dylan stink up the joint and says, you got to do what I want now. And so maybe we'll get there. But, this is interesting. But no, I'm nowhere closer to thinking that Shedeur is going to actually play this weekend.
Yo, what's really going on behind closed doors in Cleveland? Because footage just leaked that has the entire football world absolutely losing their minds right now. We're talking about a heated exchange between Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski during a practice session that nobody was supposed to see. And let me tell you something. This isn't just some minor disagreement. This is the kind of tension that's been building for months, and it finally exploded. The video is spreading like wildfire, and what you're about to hear is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about what's really happening with the Browns quarterback situation. They tried to keep this quiet, but the truth always finds a way out. And trust me, after you see what went down, you'll understand exactly why Kevin Stefanski refuses to even say Shedeur's name in press conferences anymore.
When you lose like this, you have to look at everything, every position, everything I'm doing. There's just it's frustrating for where we are as a team. So every position you have to look at. But let me say that with a young quarterback, you understand there's going to be ups and downs. Yes, it does, but I just want to make the point that we just have to be better.
Like, they went all in on last year and this year, and they're failing. They're not losing because there's 12 starters on IR. They're not losing because their team's making 60-yard field goals at the buzzer. They are consistently putting out an offense that has no chance, right? And they didn't address wide receiver in the draft, and they didn't address O-line in the draft, and they drafted Dylan Gabriel in the top 100 and said he's going to give it a shot, and he has no shot.
Clip that.
Now listen, before we dive deep into this explosive practice footage, you need to understand the timeline of events that led to this moment. Because this didn't just happen out of nowhere. There's been a systematic effort to silence Shedeur Sanders, and it all started after one viral interview that shook the entire organization to its core. Remember when our guy Justin Cooper broke that exclusive interview with Shedeur? The one where he confidently said he's ready to play right now? That the situation is in his hands, and if things happen, he'll be out there ready to perform? Yeah, that interview. That was the turning point. That was the moment everything changed. And here's what they don't want you to know. Ever since that interview went viral, the Browns organization stationed a PR representative in the locker room at all times. Their sole job? To watch Shedeur Sanders like a hawk and intercept any interview attempts. Think about that for a second. They literally assign someone to babysit a professional quarterback and make sure he doesn't talk to the media. That's not normal. That's control. That's fear. The moment Shedeur showed confidence, the moment he dared to say he's prepared and ready, that's when they decided he needed to be muzzled. And it gets worse, because after that interview dropped, Kevin Stefanski hasn't said Shedeur's name once. Not a single time. He gets asked about him in every press conference, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and this man will twist himself into a pretzel to avoid saying Shedeur Sanders.
Just where is Shedeur at as far as his development, and do you have a timetable of when you would take a look at him?
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to speculate, Daryl. We're committed to getting better as an offense. Dylan is certainly committing to improving every which way he can, and all the while, all of our players, the young players, are.
Let me paint you a picture of how ridiculous this has gotten. After their latest loss, reporters are asking Stefanski direct questions about Shedeur. They're literally saying his name in the question. And watch how he responds. When asked if Shedeur would be the number 2 active quarterback for the weekend, Stefanski goes into this whole speech about the Joe trade taking them by surprise, about how he's mindful of player development, about how he's always thinking about what's best for young players. Then, and this is where it gets wild, he says he made the change to Dylan last week and had to think long and hard about it because these are young players he's so invested in. Notice what he did there? He was asked about Shedeur. He answered with Dylan's name every single time. The reporters tried again. They asked him straight up, why wouldn't you give him an opportunity to see if it does anything to the offense? And Stefanski's response, that's not my focus right now. Just like that, dismissed, shut down. Then he pivots to talking about how when you lose, you have to look at everything, every position, but immediately follows it up by saying, with a young quarterback, you understand there's going to be ups and downs. Who's he talking about? Dylan Gabriel. Always Dylan Gabriel. But here's where it gets really telling. When a reporter asks, where is Shedeur at as far as his development, and do you have a timetable for when you would take a look at him? Stefanski says he doesn't think it's fair to speculate. Then, wait for it, we're committed to getting better as an offense. Dylan is certainly committed to improving every which way he can. He literally turned a Shedeur question into a Dylan Gabriel compliment session.
Doesn't want to acknowledge Shedeur Sanders. Never once said his name in any of the clips, right? But they ask him about Dylan, he'll say Dylan's name back in the response. That shows that he's irritated. You know, he doesn't like the media around Shedeur, and he's going to make it a point to diminish him any way he possibly can, right? So let's get to what Riz said, because Riz got on his top today. Let's check it out.
Every time I go on the internet, all I see is a bunch of dudes.
Now, why would a head coach go to such lengths to avoid acknowledging one of his own players? Why would he speak about Dylan's maturation process with glowing words and optimism, but can't even bring himself to say Shedeur's name? Let me tell you what's really going on here. And this is where the practice footage comes into play. Kevin Stefanski is irritated. He's annoyed. He doesn't like the media attention around Shedeur, and he's made it his personal mission to diminish him any way he possibly can. And the reason? It all goes back to something we exposed weeks ago. Kevin Stefanski and Dylan Gabriel's collegiate coaches share the same agent, Jimmy Sexton. That's not a coincidence. That's a conflict of interest. That's favoritism baked right into the system. So when this practice footage leaked showing Shedeur and Stefanski in a heated exchange, it wasn't shocking to those of us who'd been paying attention. It was inevitable. Because when you've got a young quarterback who's confident, who's prepared, who's ready to compete, and you've got a head coach who won't even acknowledge his existence, something's got to give. Now, the footage itself hasn't hit mainstream media yet. The organization is working overtime to keep it buried, to keep it from spreading beyond the initial leak. But from what we're hearing from sources close to the situation, here's what went down.
Like they're playing the soundbite. He won't even say his name. He won't even say his name. What is that? What is that? Now, I don't want to start getting all pissed off here this morning.
I can't explain what they're doing either. You have a coach who won't even say his name, and you realize that ever since Justin Cooper gave the viral video interview of Shedeur.
During a recent practice session in early 2025, tensions finally boiled over. Shedeur, who's been sitting on the sidelines watching Dylan Gabriel check the ball down play after play, watching the team go 2-7, watching receivers run open while Dylan throws for 167 yards and completes 17 of 32 passes, he finally said something. And not quietly, not behind closed doors, right there on the practice field where everyone could see and hear. The confrontation started during a drill. Shedeur, according to multiple people who witnessed it, questioned a play call. Not disrespectfully at first, just asked why they weren't pushing the ball downfield, why they weren't attacking outside the numbers, why the offense seemed designed to hide the quarterback rather than unleash him. And Stefanski? He didn't take it well. At all. Sources say Stefanski got defensive immediately, told Shedeur to worry about his own development and let the coaches handle the offense. But Shedeur didn't back down. He pointed out that he's been preparing every single day, studying film, working with the receivers, doing everything asked of him, and yet he can't even get his name mentioned in a press conference? He can't even get a fair shot to compete? And that's when things escalated. Stefanski reportedly told him that when he's ready, they'll know, that the coaches will decide when the time is right. But Shedeur fired back. If he's not ready now, what exactly are they doing to get him ready? What's the plan? What's the timeline? Why are the answers so vague and bland when it comes to him, but Dylan gets praised for his commitment to improving?
And some of the things he was able to say prior to their game, how they got into it, some of the other coaches they faced that has NFL experience, they were pretty much speaking for the guys that Shedeur was going to later encounter in the NFL and their overall sentiment.
The practice field went silent. Players stopped mid-drill. Everyone watched as these two stood face to face, neither backing down. And here's the thing. By all accounts from guys in that locker room, Shedeur wasn't being disrespectful. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He was asking legitimate questions that deserved legitimate answers. Questions that the fans have been asking for weeks. Questions that reporters ask in every press conference and never get real responses to. But Stefanski? He felt disrespected. He felt challenged. And in that moment, instead of addressing Shedeur's concerns like a leader, like a coach who actually cares about his players' development, he shut him down, told him to get back to work and that they'd discuss it later. Spoiler alert, they never discussed it later. What happened next is even more telling. After practice, team security confiscated phones. They made it clear that what happened on that field stays on that field. They threatened consequences for anyone who leaked footage or talked about what went down. But in 2025, you can't contain everything. Someone got video out. Someone made sure the truth would be seen. Now here's what you need to understand about why this matters so much. This isn't just about one practice confrontation. This is about a systematic failure to give a talented young quarterback a fair opportunity. This is about a coach who's so committed to his guy, Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback connected to his agent, that he's willing to tank a season rather than admit he might have made the wrong choice. Look at the numbers. Dillon Gabriel has thrown for 869 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions through 9 games. The team is 2-7. They've won 1 game since October 19th. 1 game. And in their most recent loss, they gave up 27 points to a team that had less than 170 yards of total offense. Think about that. Their opponent didn't even crack 200 yards total, and they still lost. Dillon went 17 for 32 for 167 yards in that game. And you know what the crazy part is? For the Browns to have any success, the running game has to be absolutely elite. It has to be slapping. Because Dillon's not throwing the ball outside the numbers. He's not attacking downfield. He's checking it down, playing it safe, managing the game. And in today's league, if you're not able to make those throws outside the numbers, if you can't challenge defenses vertically, you're not going to win games unless you have elite talent everywhere else. The Browns don't have elite talent everywhere else. They're not the 49ers with weapons all over the field. They need a quarterback who can create, who can extend plays, who can make something out of nothing. And yet Stefanski is dying on this hill. He's committed to proving Dillon Gabriel can play, even as the losses pile up, even as the fan base revolts, even as his own quarterback challenges him on the practice field. Meanwhile, what about Shedeur? What's his mindset through all of this? Because here's what impressed me most about that leaked footage. Shedeur never once belittled Dillon Gabriel. When he had the microphone in his face during that viral interview, he didn't throw shade at Dillon. He didn't campaign for the starting job. He simply said he's ready, he's prepared, and if the opportunity comes, he'll be ready to perform. That's confidence, not arrogance. That's a competitor, not a troublemaker. The guys in that locker room love Shedeur. They respect his work ethic. They see him preparing like a starter every single week, even though he's not getting reps with the ones. They watch him stay positive, stay engaged, stay ready. And they also see the disrespect. They see their head coach refusing to even say his name. They see the PR reps following him around. They see the preferential treatment given to Dillon. And now, after this practice confrontation, they're seeing something else. They're seeing a young man stand up for himself. They're seeing someone refuse to just accept being buried on the depth chart without explanation. They're seeing courage. And in a locker room full of professionals who are tired of losing, who are tired of watching talent get wasted, that matters. But let's talk about the bigger picture here, because this situation is deeper than just Cleveland's quarterback drama. This is about what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the draft process and how it's continuing to play out in the league. Every single team in the league passed on Shedeur for 5 rounds. 5 rounds. They watched him dominate in college, watched him show poise under pressure, watched him lead Colorado to relevance, and they all said no. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. And why? Because of who his father is, because of the perception, because NFL coaches and executives saw him and his father in college and decided, we're going to stick it to them when we get them to the big leagues. Think about what Matt Rule said before their game against Colorado when he was coaching Nebraska. Matt Rule, who coached in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers, who has NFL experience and credibility, some of the things he said before that game were pretty much speaking for the guys that Shedeur would later encounter in the NFL. The sentiment was clear. They had an issue with Coach Prime, and by extension, with Shedeur. So they made him wait. They made him slide. And when Cleveland finally took him in the 6th round, they had no intention of actually playing him. This was never about giving him a fair shot. This was about asserting dominance, about showing the Sanders family that the NFL is different, that confidence doesn't play here, that you need to know your place. And that's exactly what makes Shedeur's stance during that practice confrontation so important. Because he refused to know his place. He refused to sit quietly while his career gets buried. He refused to let them break his spirit or dim his confidence. And that scares them. That threatens the power structure. That's why they won't say his name. That's why they station PR reps to control his media access. That's why they're trying so hard to suppress this practice footage. But here's the thing they don't understand. You can't suppress the truth forever. You can't keep a talented player down forever. Eventually, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else, Shedeur Sanders is going to get his opportunity. And when he does, when he finally gets to show what he can do, all of this, the draft slide, the name avoidance, the practice confrontation, it's all going to fuel him. Some people are saying he should request a trade, that he should get out of Cleveland and go somewhere that actually wants him. And I get it. I understand the frustration. But here's the reality. Where would he go? Every team in the league passed on him multiple times. Every team had the chance and said no. So what makes you think another organization would be better? Maybe there are some better options out there. Maybe there's a team that would appreciate what he brings to the table. But until that opportunity presents itself, Shedeur signed a 4-year deal worth $4.6 million with Cleveland. He's committed to this team, even if this team isn't committed to him. And that says something about his character. What I want to see, what we all want to see, is some basic human decency and respect from Kevin Stefanski. Is that too much to ask? That he refers to Shedeur the same way he refers to Dillon Gabriel? That he acknowledges him as a competitor, as a professional, as someone who deserves transparency about his development and his role? Because right now, the vagueness isn't just frustrating, it's disrespectful. When reporters ask about Shedeur and Stefanski responds with, "I don't think it's fair to speculate," that's not an answer. When they ask for a timetable and he pivots to talking about Dillon's commitment to improving, that's not an answer. When they ask why he won't give him a chance to see what he can do, and he says, "That's not my focus," that's not an answer. The people, the fans who buy tickets, who support this team through losing season after losing season, they deserve transparency. They deserve to know why a 6th-round pick who showed out in college, who has the confidence and preparation of a starter, can't even get a real evaluation. They deserve better than coach speak and deflection. And Shedeur? He definitely deserves better. He deserves a coach who will develop him, who will give him real feedback, who will create a plan for his growth instead of just burying him on the depth chart and hoping he goes away quietly. He deserves to know what he needs to improve, what the benchmarks are, what the path forward looks like. But that's not what's happening. Instead, we've got leaked practice footage of a confrontation that should have never happened. We've got a head coach who won't even say a player's name. We've got an organization in damage control mode trying to suppress the truth and control the narrative. Well, guess what? The truth is out. The footage is out. And the people see what's really going on. This situation is about more than football. It's about power, control, ego, and the unwillingness of some people in positions of authority to admit when they might be wrong. It's about favoritism and conflicts of interest. It's about a young black quarterback with a famous father being held to a different standard than everyone else.
And before anyone tries to make this about Shedeur not being ready, let me ask you this. If he's not ready, whose fault is that? He's been on the roster since the draft. He's been in meetings, in practice, in the film room. If he's still not ready, what has the coaching staff been doing all this time? Why isn't there visible progress? Why can't Stefanski articulate what Shedeur needs to work on or what the development plan looks like? The silence speaks volumes. The name avoidance speaks volumes. And now, this practice confrontation speaks volumes. Shedeur Sanders isn't going to back down. He's not going to accept being disrespected or buried without asking questions. And honestly, good for him. Because too many young players in his position would just take it, would stay quiet, would let the coaches control the narrative without pushing back. But Shedeur knows his worth. He knows what he's capable of. And when his opportunity finally comes, whether it's in Cleveland after Dillon continues to struggle, or somewhere else if they give up on him, he's going to be ready. Because that's what he's been doing this whole time. Staying ready, staying prepared, staying confident. So that's where we're at. Leaked practice footage showing tension that's been building for months, a head coach who won't acknowledge one of his own players by name, an organization trying to suppress the truth, and a young quarterback who refused to back down when confronted with disrespect and vagueness. This story is far from over. This is just the beginning, because you can't treat people this way and expect it not to eventually explode. You can't systematically disrespect someone and think they'll just accept it quietly. And you definitely can't suppress footage in 2025 when everyone has cameras and social media. The question now is, what happens next? Does Stefanski finally give Shedeur a real opportunity? Does he continue to die on the Dillon Gabriel hill even as the losses pile up? Does Shedeur request a trade? Does the organization finally provide some transparency? I want to know what you think. Do you believe Shedeur deserves a shot? Do you think Stefanski's name avoidance is intentional disrespect or just coincidence? And what would you do if you were in Shedeur's position? Stay and fight for your opportunity, or demand a trade and get out of a situation that clearly doesn't value you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about what's going on in Cleveland and what it means for Shedeur Sanders' future. And if you made it this far, you're clearly invested in this story just like we are. So do me a favor, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates as this situation continues to unfold. Hit the notification bell because you know we're going to be all over this story as more details emerge. And share this video with anyone who needs to see the truth about what's really happening behind the scenes. This is bigger than football, family. This is about respect, opportunity, and standing up for yourself when the system tries to break you down. Until next time, stay locked in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.